Hello, my amazing students. We're here for a lesson on writing expressions. Isn't that exciting? I know you guys are excited. So let's dig right into it really quick. So we talked about expressions previously, just a little bit. We talked about the different parts, terms, constants, coefficients, the different operations and things like that. So now we're going to talk about how would we write expressions. So we're going to start with a little review of some key terms and phrases that we should be aware of. So let's go ahead and start on the next clean paper in our math notebook. And let's go ahead and write our header. Word expressions. All right, so you guys know that everything with math can be essentially broken down to numbers, but more often than not, when we communicate with words. So even when we're talking about math, we have lots of math vocabulary that we use all the time. And so these are kind of those key terms and ideas that we use all the time to express ourselves when we're talking about math, okay? So we're going to kind of make a little bit of a chart, and we're going to put some operations over here, and we're going to put keywords and phrases. Okay, I'm going to try and draw as neat of a line as I can down. I don't know how far I need to go, but I'll go down about that far. Okay, and I'll just draw a line here. And the first operation we're going to talk about is, if I say the first one, I think you guys are probably going to automatically go to thinking about addition. And remember, this is the mathematical sign for addition. You guys know that. All right, so some key terms. If you guys were in my classroom right now, I'd say, okay, guys, shout out some key terms. But you're not here, so I'm going to shout them out for you. And hopefully it'll stir up some memories. So the first one that I would think about is added to. Another word that I think about when I think about addition is plus. We say that one a lot. We also use sum of, as in the sum of 2 and 4 equals 6. Sometimes we use this one, more than. For instance, we might say, George has 6 cookies and Margarita has 4 more than George. How many do they have together? Or something like that. Then we might say increased by. Remember, we talked about that one a lot when we were talking about temperatures and on the number line. So increased by is a good addition keyword or phrase. You might say the total of. If you think about the total of students in my class, I would be adding up all the students. And hey, listen, this is a basic one, but end. A lot of times, it's not always a signal for addition, but a lot of times it is a signal for addition. And then I think you guys are all familiar with this one, combine. So combined. Fred has 6 cookies and Margarita has 4 cookies. How many do they have combined? All right, so that should sound pretty familiar to you too. And there are more, and if you think of some and you want to add them into the chart, that's more than fine. But for now, I feel like we've covered a few good ones, so I'm going to move on. Okay, so the next operation, you probably can figure that one out yourself. What we're going to next, it's going to be subtraction. Okay, and remember that this is the mathematical sign for the operation. And so, again, just some common keywords and phrases. Well, how about the basic subtracted from? This one's real basic, minus. We also know that difference is a math verb. A lot of times it's partnered with of, the difference of 10 and 4. 10 minus 4 is 6. Less than, just like we said, more than for addition, less than works as a good phrase for subtraction. Increased by was addition. If you guys remember, decreased meant the temperature went down and we had to subtract. Decreased by. Fewer than instead of more than, fewer than. And then the good old take away or taken away. All right, and again, there are other words that are also keywords and phrases for subtraction, but we don't have to have every single one. We just have to get thinking about them, okay? So I'm going to end it there, but you are more than welcome to add some more if you can think of them and you want to write them down. Let's see. Next one, multiplication. There's not always as many for multiplication. I feel like there are quite a few, but the most common ones are usually the ones that you're going to see. But the way to write it mathematically would be an X or a dot or parentheses. That's how we write it in 6th grade, those 3 ways. Okay, and remember, now that we're using expressions, we don't really want to use that X ever, because now that we have variables, that X could confuse us if we use an X in our expression. So we want to make sure that we stay away from using the X when we're using expressions and stuff. All right, so multiplication, we could think of multiplied by. The good old basic times. This one is a super common one, and it's, I think, one of the best ones to use, the product of. It's a great math verbiage. Also, don't forget about things like there are words like twice. That one also signifies, or double. Words like that. Triple. And so forth. And then of. Remember, we had a conversation a while back that when we're seeing word problems and we see the word of very often signifies multiplication. Put a little star next to that one. That one you really need to make sure you remember. Of. Alrighty. Now let's do some division keywords. And remember that the division symbols are this. And then also remember that division can be written as a fraction like this, x over y. Okay. And as you get older and move through the grades and you progress in math, you're going to see this more and more, and you're going to see this less and less. Okay. It's going to start to disappear on you a little bit. Okay. So some good keywords for division would be obviously divided by. I love the math verb quotient. And usually it's paired up with quotient of. Per. Remember, per is if you divide things and you give 6 per person. Out of. And then percent. Percent is also division, remember? Alright, and I'm just going to extend that down a little bit. And now I have a good little chart. And like I said, it's okay if you can think of other ones and you want to add it. Feel free. You can add them. Okay? So that's a good cheat sheet for you as we are working with writing expressions. And I'm going to use a couple of examples right here. Okay, so if I say 21 minus 8, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I didn't have it up. I could write it as 8 less than 21. Okay. And then if I were to say, let's say I said the product of 30 and 9. If I said the product of 30 and 9, you would write that as 30 times 9. And so what I want you to look at actually in this one, I really like this example for you because it's something that's important. So remember up here in the addition, we had said and. However, you have to pay attention. It's not always addition. So notice that there's an and right here. Okay? But they already gave you a math verb. You already know that there's some multiplication going on in here. Okay? When you see the end between two numbers, it means that's where an operation sign goes. Okay? So when you see two numbers surrounded by surrounding the word and, it means now what you have to do is figure out which operation goes in between them. So I always like to, as I'm solving these problems, I like to circle my operation word, and then I know that this means multiply, and then I draw an arrow and I put it to the end, and then that tells me my problem is 30 times 9. Alrighty. We're going to look at a couple of more examples, okay? So now these ones are not going to be numerical. The first two I gave you were numerical. This time we're going to use variables in our expressions. So when we have an unknown, remember a variable is an unknown number. It could be any number, and we have to figure that out somehow. You don't have to figure it out when we're writing these, but eventually you'll learn how to figure it out. Right now, we're just learning how to write it. Okay, so let's say I said 14 more than a number. When you see a number, means you're plugging in a variable. And it's almost always followed by an explanation of what variable they want you to use. So for this case, I'm going to use an X. So, and sometimes the X will be written funny. It might be italicized, when it's written a little slanted, or it might be bolded. And then sometimes they don't do anything special to it, and it's just an X. Okay? So now the goal here is to write this in a number sentence, in a numerical expression, in a algebraic expression, okay? So 14 more than X. Well, the first thing I know is I'm starting with my X because this is the number that's going to have something added to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the number X. And then how would you write 14 more? If I started with X and I had 14 more, hopefully you're thinking, add 14. Okay, next one. The quotient of 3 and a number W. Okay, well, first I can see that I have a variable, so there better be a variable in my answer. And then remember what I said about that word and. When I see that and, that means I'm going to find my math verb. Quotient means to divide. And I'm going to plug it into the end. So that means 3 divided by W. So the quotient of 3 divided by W, keep it in order. Don't go W divided by 3. You always use the same order that the numbers are in. You never change it. So the way I would write that is I could write it like this, 3 divided by W. But the better way to write it would be 3 divided by W. And I'll put the little star there to show that that's the way that we really should write it. Okay? All right, the next one. The difference of 2 and 3 times a number P. All right, and also notice that my variables most often are lowercase letters. We should try and make sure that we keep our variables as lowercase. All right. Okay. Hopefully you're kind of doing this in your head already. You're seeing a pattern. Well, I see the difference of 2 and 3 times a number P. So I know I have the variable P I have to deal with. But I also see the end. And so I'm going to circle the word that is my math verb. Difference tells me to divide. And, subtract. And I'm going to just draw an arrow. So I know that it's going to be 2 minus, and then it says 3 times a number p. Well, remember, this is another operation right here. This is telling me to multiply. 3 times, what am I multiplying it by? P, a number p. So 2 minus 3p. You could also write it like this, but you don't need to. There's no need for it. This is the preferred way to write that guy. Okay, the difference of 2 and 3 times a number p. If it had said the difference of 3 times a number p and 2, it would be backwards. You would write 3p minus 2. So remember, you keep it in the order that you read it. Okay? Alrighty, guys. That is our lesson for today. You're going to go do our practice activity. Take your time. After you do it, make sure you read the comments after I've graded it. You are allowed to attempt it and turn it in again so that you can get an even higher score. And have fun.